And welcome to our audience here in Brussels, where we've just had some delicious Belgian food. They haven't disappointed us, and they never do. This afternoon, we're going to be looking at internationalization again. We are going to be hearing from DG Grow, DG Trade about the services, tools they offer to businesses that want to export their services abroad. We're also going to be hearing later on about some export architect networks and export promotion agencies. But before all of that, we've got two leading speakers for you. And the first, as I said before the break, has the interesting perspective of a client. And she joins us online. A few words about Joy Mboya, Executive Director of the GoDown Arts Centre in Nairobi, Kenya. Joy has a background in architecture, and she's overseeing a project that is aiming to transform the Arts Centre into a multidisciplinary arts facility. So welcome, Joy, to Brussels. Please give us the client perspective of internationalization. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I wonder whether the slides that I shared are visible to you.
We will make sure that they are. If you say next slide, the technical team here can always move them for you.
Wonderful. So I can see them on another screen, and that's helpful. Thank you so much. And thank you again for this invitation to share a few minutes with you around our experience as a client with an international firm working with a local firm here in Nairobi in Kenya. So the firm that we have had a long relationship with and continue to have a relationship with is White Architects from Sweden. And they have partnered with a local architect called Planning Systems Services Limited, who are based here in Nairobi. And together they have been assisting us to try and realize this vision of a civic scale cultural institution for a post-colonial Nairobi, a post-colonial Kenya. And I think that, speaking from the client perspective, I think one of the things that is interesting around that is to try and see how this team of architects, and particularly the international architect, was able to, or is able to, because it's an ongoing relationship, to speak to a desire or a need that we have. And it's a need that we also understood as we began to collaborate together. So we met White Architects in 2010. So it's a relationship that is almost 14 years old now. In fact, it is 14 years old. And I think there were a number of things that impressed us right away about their approaches and their perspective. One is, of course, that they're very thoughtful in the way that they engage with the work. And this was important to us because we ran into each other at a point in time when we were also being very thoughtful around what is our role as a cultural organization in Nairobi, what is our place as a cultural organization in the city and in the region, and particularly what does it mean to be a cultural organization in a post-colonial environment, urban environment that is in flux, that is changing, that is messy, that nobody really knows the direction of, and we're in there trying to contribute to its shaping in some way. So we found that White's approaches helped us to explore other directions besides the architectural aspect that were really important for us to realize this fuller question, which, if I'm to frame it, I would say the fuller question was, how are we being enabled as an art center, an arts institution, to really grapple with these questions of a post-colonial identity for ourselves, post-colonial urbanism, which is what we're experiencing, and this whole idea of post-colonial arts and culture and the audiences that consume it. So if we kindly move to the second slide. So I think there's of course two ways in which one could have this discussion, and one is that you're talking about an international firm that finds a local partner, and together they they navigate the local context primarily through that local partner. They identify a project, and the project has a client, and you can talk about, you know, what was enabled, or what value was derived, or what solutions were gained through that process. But I think that when we speak about our relationship with our partner architect White, I think that we have to flip some of those elements, and the context is really very key. One is thinking about the context that they find us in, and how they begin to understand that, and how they begin to help us also understand it, as we give them a brief around what we desire to do, in terms of shaping the built environment space, but also, you know, having a building. So I think that we would look at it in terms of sort of saying that the context is key in this particular instance. And then the client, I think, is also very important, because we were asking a question that was not just a question around build us a building, design a building for us. You know, it was really a more fundamental question around how do you begin to shape the urban landscape with architecture in a space that is asking some very deep questions around what should an African city look like today as in an independent state. What does architecture look like in that kind of a city today? How is that arrived at? How is that design arrived at? So this idea of the vision of the client and enabling that vision of the client with these very difficult questions, I think is another aspect. And then, of course, it's then the project itself. So what is the scope and scale of this project? And as I've just mentioned, we have been with White for over 10 years now. It's a long time for a client and an architect to be together, but there is a reason for it. And I think that is part of the thoughtfulness and the patience, and I think the generosity of collaboration that we have experienced with them in trying to unravel this particular question. Then, of course, the international firm and its partnering local architect, and the dynamics there, and the knowledge exchange that happens there, and how they find a common value basis, are all aspects of the experience that I will share a little bit as in the 10 minutes that we have. So if we kindly move to the next slide. So if we now look at the context, then I think that our big question, and I have foregrounded Africa here, because for those who are working in Africa, there is a sense that the continent is becoming very much aware of itself. It's a very interesting continent, extremely young. As they say, the median age is hovering around 1920, so a very young population, but a very aspirational population who are shedding heritage as we knew it and culture as we knew it, but who also understand that is a route that they can lean on even as they imagine their futures, the kind of countries they want to live in, the kind of culture they want to promote, the kind of cities they want to be in. So for us as an art center, then the context is one in which we are constantly asking questions. What does it mean to be African? What does it mean to be East African? What does it mean to be Kenyan? What does it mean to be Nairobian? And then what does it mean to sit in the part of Nairobi that we sit in, which is really on the edge of the central railway station and the fringes of a light industry area, and that is where our space and base is. So this is just now the geography of it, but then the other aspect of context, of course, is what are the social dynamics that are happening within that context, and what do they mean? How do they impact or affect how we see and how we think as a cultural organization? What are the political dynamics as well, of course? What is the policy that enables the built environment to move in certain directions and to fail to move in certain directions? But also, what is the cultural prospect? How are people seeing themselves as contemporary beings? And what are the tensions? What are the opportunities? And so on. So in this sort of wonderful kind of soup of
Joy was giving us such great insights to the context. Let's see whether we can rejoin her. I know that she's got some pictures of this art center. Are we going to be able to join her? Put a thumbs up if we can reconnect the line. We're not sure. Okay, so what we're going to do is please tell her that we're now going to go to the other architect for 10 minutes and she can reconnect and show us some of her pictures. Okay, so we're going to drop that line and come back to her, if that's clear to the technical team. Okay, these things happen. It was too good to be true. It was a fantastic line from Nairobi. And it was going to be very interesting to see what had happened with this long-standing collaboration with this Swedish company. But the advantage is that our next speaker is here in person, and so the line cannot go down. Our next keynote speaker has worked across Europe. His company, May Architects and Planners, are constructing the first ever circular full timber building in Rotterdam. It's won awards. It's known as the SAWA, S-A-W-A, and it really encapsulates the practice's focus on sustainability in these new building concepts. So please welcome the founder of MAI, Robert WINKEL. Do come on stage and tell us about your experience working abroad and some of the values that underpin your work.
Architects in our profession. It's very nice to see that things are proceeding to get our profession more professionalized. But I'm here to tell about us and about our journey, more or less, through our consciousness of being an architect. By Architects and Planners, we are a middle office of 35 people, sometimes 25, sometimes 50. This is a picture of 50 people, 12 nationalities. The average age is 34. We got a lot of part-timers. That's actually in every modern Western company, more or less. And we need more women in our office. That's for sure. We do a lot of projects in Europe, already 20 years. We had the projects in Russia, but we stopped, of course. And we are very glad to do European projects because we understand the European tradition, languages, and those things. So it's very nice. We excelled in transformation projects in the EU in 2020. I'm going through these projects very quickly, but to see how we evolved actually in position ourselves as an architect. We did a big conversion of a warehouse, which is a listed building in Holland. The cheese warehouse is a swimming pool we converted. Shopping center from the 50s, and tower we gave a new cladding around it. And the first commission I had 20 years ago to convert a building into a building with a lot of small companies. We more or less we came into area development with existing buildings. So existing buildings and urban planning. That's very interesting because there's not so many people who can do it. Or you do urban planning with blue foam, or you do existing buildings. But this combination is really nice. So we did it in Rotterdam. It's a building where our office is established. But also in Delft, 360,000 square meters with an existing factory we incorporated. And also in Gouda. And we exported our knowledge also internationally. We won, a long time ago, 20 years ago, a competition in Rainham, London. It's very nice to do that. We work together with Atkins. It's not really architecture office, but a kind of consultant. It's a nice collaboration. In Moss, maybe somebody from Norway. No, nobody from Norway. It's a former paper factory. We transformed it into a city. It's executed. And also in Ham, we did a collaboration with Baal Architecten, redevelopment of a former mine complex. But we went on. This is in Bonn, the Bonafana fabric, which we converted. This is a plan for in Nantes, in France. And in Paris, we sent in this project. It's not being executed, totally made out of wood. And then in the end, we came to our top project, which is Phoenix in Rotterdam, which is an existing storage building, a warehouse, which a new building on top of it, with a table of 1 million kilos of steel. And I was very proud of this, but I'm not proud anymore to tell this. because 1 million kilos of steel, it's a lot of CO2 emission. And the concrete building on top is also a lot of CO2 emission. And when we started, we won a lot of prizes with this building, in total 22 awards. The jury members ask me all the time, is it biodiverse? Is it bio-based? Is there other common spaces for people? And I thought, yes. I said, yeah, we didn't do it in those times. It was designed in 2013, something like that. And time changes quickly. So I thought we have to reconsider things. And not only I reconsider this, but also the Bauhaus, the Davos Baukultur quality system. Maybe you know it. It's very nice, integral quality describing how you have to deal with architecture. I'm also chairman of the Spatial Quality Committee of Amsterdam. So that gives me also, I work for the municipality. It gives also a kind of idea what is happening actually and what is my position as an architect. I do this also in Rotterdam. For the Innenstad Bremen, I'm advising those things. And I thought we have to change things. Also, we did an introvision for our company. We made a book about context, community, flexibility, new values, and aesthetics. So I was trying to. I say we have to do more. We have to have more ambition. What's telling this whole morning was telling we have to have ambition. We have to change. We have to. There are other questions. We have to do inclusivity. We have to work on sustainability, and it is. We have to work on a better future. But all the time, when I tell these things to a client, they say you are stacking ambitions. And you have to do it yourself because I'm not going to do this. And what are these ambitions? Community context, CO2, energy neutral, biodiversity, shared economy, inclusivity, and health. Health is also very important. Didn't heard it yet. So we made a project ourselves. We become our own client and not with a bottom-up project, but a top-down project with Saba, 109 apartments. The total sum of money is 50 million. And we started in 2020, it's nearly finished. It's the first building with a lot of ambitions in it, stacked ambitions. It's a full timber circular building in Europe. Circular, that means there are 750,000 screws in the building. 4 people from Germany bound this building in 5 months. Can you imagine, with so many screws? That's possible. It can be demounted. We store a lot of CO2, which can be valuized. We get money for it, monetarized. There are 3,000 plants in 700 meters of planters, and there's a vegetable garden in the building, and there's a mid-market rent apartments, affordable rent apartments. If I tell this to a client, they say it's impossible, but we did it. And I know why we could achieve this. Because the business model of the client is that he wants profit maximization. What we did, we took a lot of 5% of our profit and we put it into the project. And then everything is feasible. We as an architect, we can make everything feasible. So it's a total structure with dry mounted structure with reused pebbles of the roof as a mass. That's totally new. Of 50 meters high, we're doing this. So it can be changed in the future. It's now being mounted. You see, all the wood will be inside. It won't be plastered. Financial Times came by, very happy with that. We won a lot of international prizes, unbilled prizes already. Yeah, that's very nice. And what is very much nicer, that it's all teamwork. We want to work together. No, there's no place for egos. We have to do it together. So we worked with a lot of people around, a lot of second opinions. We had 8 second opinions in the end. Can you imagine? But it's better to have 8 second opinions instead of 1. That means that a lot of people believe into the project. And we can reproduce it because this system is now a system. It's totally proven, it's certified, everything. So we aren't going to export it to different countries. Sorry, I forgot Africa. Next time I will put it there. Sorry. But that's what we're busy with. And you can see it already in Knokke, Heist, in Belgium, over there. I don't know if they know it, but it will be there very soon. And we won a competition in Münster, in Germany. So we're working together again, but with a different attitude with our colleagues in other countries. And this is also the same structure as SAWA, but then in an existing guest holder in collaboration with Peter Bastian Architects. We are now, we have a lot of work at the moment. That's really strange because in Holland, in Netherlands, I'm from Netherlands, Rotterdam, there's not so much work. But because we became our own client, we have a lot of work. These are the projects we're working on, and they're all feasible. And there's also a lot of social housing and care housing in there. So it's possible, but you have to change the business model of the client and become your own client. Okay, that's very short. The SAWA concept stands for Carrying Forward European Values in the UAE and beyond. Of course, it's not European values, but also African values, world values. People who take care of society. That's the most important thing, and people. And that's, I think it's an archetype for the new European Bauhaus principles. And we must work on that and become independent as architects and not let us be suffering as a victim to the clients to say it's not possible, because everything is possible. That's it.
Thank you very much, Robert. If you just stay with us and we could take one question, because Joy is back online and we don't want to lose Joy. But is there one question in the room? If so, please put up your hand and the microphone will go round. You can see really the new European Bauhaus values of beauty, inclusivity and sustainability in that SAWA building, which no doubt is coming to a city near you over the next decade. So I don't see anybody in the room. Lucas, anybody online? No, Jacques. Would you like to bring a microphone for Jacques? One question, and then we'll go back to Joy.
You leveraged the first round of investment for that project, in the sense that as architects, very often the challenge to work as your own client, the challenge is to get to that first round, to get to that first intervention.
I have to give a bit, but normally you have the forward funding to that the money gets around. It's about in the Netherlands, it's about 20,000 euros per apartment. So it was 2 million you have to invest in it, and the half of the money. But I can give more information if you want, because it needs more information to give to you. But a very short way, the half of the money are the consultants, but also the reservation costs for the ground, those things. And the other half is the money for the developer. And mostly it's 5% of the total amount of costs. So that was 1 million euros or something at the moment. But we were the developer, so we could get the money in the end. So we invested our hours; they were for free, 2 days a week, and we managed to develop this project. And the co-developer, we had a co-developer. We did 4/5 of the costs came to us, and 1/5 was the controlling developer. He said they never have seen a project so fast proceeding. So architects can do good development, I think.
Thank you, Robert, very, very much. A round of applause. And Robert is here and can answer many of your questions. You'll see that Joy is back. Joy, we had a great line with you. You were talking about the local context. I know that you've got some photos of the art centre. Would you like to explain the work that you have been doing with this Swedish architectural firm, and perhaps we can see some photos of it?
Yes, thank you. And sorry for that line dropping off. I think we can move to the next slide, because I was about to talk about the nature of the client then. And in our relationship with White, I think what we all quickly understood is that the client is actually the people of Nairobi. So while through the GoDown Art Center, we were probing this question around identity and belonging, of course, in the city, it's a question that speaks to all of us. Who are we in the city? And I think that some of the things that, as a partner, that White enabled and actually opened doors for us in terms of us investigating this question was to be able to bring their tools and approaches in workshops that embraced a very diverse stakeholder base. And some of that stakeholder base included residents. Some of it included artists, of course, who are our primary constituent. And a very important one, of course, also included city officials, because here, even though in our policy in the city we have a stipulation that people should participate in any activity, public space, public planning activity that is going to impact them, it was not something that the city knew how to do. And I think that through the practices of White, in terms of their workshop approaches, and also through our own strategy of working with festivals and working with exhibitions, we began to show the city how you can mobilize people in different ways in order to bring on board their opinions and their thought. I think what was actually very special and important here is that every year, White would come into the territory and we'd advance a certain aspect of this question of identity and of understanding the city. At one point in these travels that they were making and these visits and workshops that they were coming and co-producing with us, the city had embarked on creating its own integrated master plan. And one of the studies that we had been doing with White was the study around the railway station area, which is adjacent to our art center. It's the historic heart of the city. And in studying that and looking at that and thinking about how it could change, we were able to propose and submit a proposal into the city's integrated new plan around how that whole area could change, how that whole area could be developed. And now this matter has been picked up again by the city, and I can see elements of the thinking that happened with White, all of that almost 10 years ago, sitting in that new master plan today. But if I can move on to the next slide. So the residents then are actually the client, and it turns out we are the intermediary through them. So after doing all of the macro studies, and the map that you're seeing over there just sort of indicates the territory that we're looking at, that we spend quite a bit of time on. The red aspect is where the GoDown is based, and then the green line that moves from the GoDown heading sort of northwest is a street, a major axis that we studied with White that we called the axis. It links the area south of the GoDown, which is residential, into the central business district, which is the northern area. And I think one of the things that this enabled us to do was to have conversations around city identities with diverse stakeholders before we even came to the discussion around the redevelopment of the new building itself. And the image that you see on the side over there is the render of the new GoDown Art Center that was designed or conceived by White. And of course, this was also another one that has won an award before it is built, and we're actually very proud of that indeed. But I think that one of the values, then, if we can talk about what value did this enable us as a client, is that in co-implementing these various activities with different stakeholders, we began to widen our networks as the GoDown Art Center. This was important to us. We began to build traction with the city officials as well, a certain legitimacy around the work that we do and the questions that we're raising. So much so that they then included us in some of their working groups where they need to bring in culture, where they need to bring in the cultural lens, where they need to bring in community, and where they need to think about mobilization. So this advanced our own agenda around being able to ask questions in the right places about where is Nairobi headed, what is the identity of Nairobi, what does urbanism mean in Nairobi today, and therefore to build an art center in Nairobi, what does that mean to build an art center in Nairobi today? We can move to the next slide. So I think that for White, and I'm sure that they can speak for themselves, but some of the things that I saw just in terms of the exchange, if you're looking at barriers and some of the challenges, I think culturally at a number of different levels. I mean, the pace of Nairobi is a slow pace. Nairobi, we had a joke between us where, you know, our White collaborators would say that when they're in Sweden, they talk about the weather, and when they come to Nairobi, they talk about the traffic. And I think that the traffic is symbolic of the snarl that you find across many layers of how Nairobi works or doesn't work. That many things are actually a traffic jam in a certain way. So where you might have a plan or a project that you're hoping to make good traction on within a space of, let's say, 10 months, I think you need to change the word months in Nairobi to years. and really think about the long term and have the patience of the long haul. And I'm amazed at actually the patience that that White has shown in this entire process. But I think that it is because of their approach that it is not just about the building, but it is also around building networks. It is also around looking at macro questions. It is also around giving capacity to their local partners around using these tools themselves as well to be able to ask these questions. I think that huge value was nevertheless delivered in that process that is slow. We can move to the final slide, I think, or close to the final slide. Now, one of the big impacts, I think, was on the local firm and the local practice itself, because our experience of architects locally is one where the architect knows everything. They will tell you this is what you need to do. They'll pick up the brief, and you'll see them when you see them, and you might sort of try and squeak and say, I think that is probably not what we should do. Maybe we can change this, and they know everything. But I think that here, the White approach began to sort of suggest and show that we can all be collaborators in a question together. And our local architects, I think, have really seized on this. Our local architects in other aspects of the work that we're doing, that we're not doing directly with White, have now taken on board exactly the same approaches. Who are the stakeholders who need to be in this conversation? How do we bring them on board? How do we understand and hear from them? What are the tools that we have that we can use as architects that brings their thinking closer to us so that we can actually respond to their questions, to their needs, and to their desires? And one good example is the design of the street right outside the GoDown Art Center, where the local architect has actually been key in working with the local community, with ourselves, with artists, to try and see how these communities that earn a livelihood off of the street, that use and move up and down the street, are key individuals in inputting into the design and vision of the street itself. Then the other level, I think, is for us ourselves as a client. What has happened now is that the GoDown actually has a division, a part of our work, which we call GoDown Urban. And here we begin to look at urban questions a little bit more deliberately through the lens of culture, of course, but sort of saying, what does it mean to be urban in very strategic ways? So we work with universities, faculties of architecture in particular, to try and see how there can be a knowledge sharing with young professionals, with young would-be planners, young would-be architects, so that as they come out into the profession, they're hopefully looking at things in a more open-minded and collaborative way. And this has been important for us to just expand our own practice as an art center. But the bigger built environment as well, I think, in Nairobi has also been impacted, because we are now able to have conversations with the built environment space, have dialogues with them around what does it mean to work in a different way with our architectural practice. So while we set off to do one thing with White, I can say that the impact and their endurance and staying with us, staying the course with us, has actually had a massive ripple effect across the built environment in Nairobi, our own work particularly, but also our local partners as well. And thank you very much. I think I will stop there.
Thank you, Joy, very, very much indeed, for that very important two-way process. Let me ask, I'm sure there's lots of questions, but I will ask just for one, because we've got some other speakers waiting online and we want to make sure that they stay in the waiting room and don't give up. Is there one question in the room that you would like to ask Joy? Great to hear a client perspective and also the learnings from the Kenyan architects and also the Swedish architects. Anything, Lucas, online? Okay. Well, Joy, thank you so much for sharing that experience. And I'm sure that the next time I'm in Nairobi, I want to go and find your art center. That's for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you. So
we now go on to session 3, which has been called, in fact, I think this title could be improved, couldn't it? Exploring the EU instruments contributing to the internationalisation of European businesses. In fact, it is going to be full of useful information. We're going to hear, first of all, from three experts from DG Trade, Thibaud, Jakob, and I believe Claire is here in the room. Hey, thank you, Claire. And they are going to say what they do to encourage European businesses to export. So, Thibaud, if you're online, would you like to begin?
Good afternoon. Yes, indeed, I'm online, and I'm happy to kick off. Yes.
Please
So,
start.
thanks a lot indeed. So, my name is Thibaud BODSON. I work for the Directorate-General for Trade, and I'm grateful for the invitation from the Architects Council of Europe to present a specific tool that we have been developing for the past couple of years. The tool is called My Trade Assistant for Service and Investment. And that's a tool we believe that can be indeed very useful for architects who want to export services, who want to sell services to clients located in third countries. What I'll do in my presentation is two different things. The first one is I'll briefly explain what are the objectives pursued with this tool, My Trade Assistant for Service and Investment. And then I'll take a couple of minutes to give you a live demonstration of how to use My Trade Assistant for Service and Investment. So the first point on the objective, well, we realized that one of the main challenges that service suppliers in general, but also architects more specifically, one of the challenges that they would face when willing to export service to clients in third countries would be indeed to access information on the specific conditions, on the specific requirements that they need to fulfill when exporting the services. To be concrete, we are talking about licensing authorization, we are talking about licensing authorization, registration, about recognition of qualifications and the like. And indeed, it's not always easy for European businesses to find the information. Why? Because either the information is located in different places, or because the information is technical, or because the information is not in a language that they can speak. So for all these different reasons, we thought, okay, it would be good to bring together all these pieces of information and to provide them on a dedicated platform. And this dedicated platform is indeed My Trade Assistant for Service Investment. On the scope, the platform does include specific practical information that will help architects, among other professions, that will help architects having a better understanding of the practical conditions that they need to fulfill when exporting services. Exporting services currently in 4 different countries, so the scope of the platform is limited to 4 countries, namely Switzerland, the United Kingdom, Japan, and Canada. So if architects in the room or beyond, member of the organization, want indeed to provide architectural services in one of those 4 countries, then they will find practical information that will help them in doing so on My Trade Assistant for Service Investment. The scope is currently limited to 4 countries. We are now working on extending it to another 4 countries. And by the end of this year, by the end of 2024, the objective is to have on the top of the 4 countries I already mentioned, to have also United States, China, Norway, and Hong Kong. So that's, in a nutshell, the objectives and the scope covered by My Trade Assistant for Service and Investment. Now that's I'm starting with my second point, a live demonstration of how to use the tool. And for this, I'll share my screen. So share, I hope you can see my screen indeed. If not, please shout, but I take that you can see it indeed. So to access the tool My Trade Assistant for service investment, users have to connect to the Access to Markets webpage of the European Commission. So they have to search for it, and then to find this Access to Markets page, they can Google that. And then when landing on the page, they scroll down and they see here indeed that they reach the My Trade Assistant section. And the second tab, and I'm clicking on it, is indeed dedicated to service and investment. Then they have to fill 3 different boxes in order to refine, to clarify the search that they want to launch. The first one is that they are indeed interested in the supply of architectural services. Then they have to select the country to which they would like to export those services. Let's say that you want to export to Switzerland, you have a client there and you wonder about the specific requirements, the specific conditions that you need to fulfill. And then the third box relates to the jurisdiction. Here you have to select the specific place where your client is located. That's important. Why? Because when it comes to the supply of services, this may be regulated both at the national level, but also sometime at the subnational level. That's why you have to indicate where exactly at the subnational level you want to export services. Let's take here an example from the capital. So your client will be located in Bern in the Swiss capital. And so you start the search. Then you reach the results page. So you have here the results for architectural service in Switzerland, Bern. And you have in front of you specific practical information on the different requirements that you need to fulfill. This information is displayed according to the mode of supply through which you will want to provide the services. So you will provide it either cross-border or through commercial presence or through movement of professionals. So in a nutshell, what are these 3 different modes of supply referring to? Well, movement of professional reflects the situation where you or some of your staff will move to the country where the client is located to supply the service there on the ground. So let's think that you are based, for instance, in Germany, in France, in Spain, in Italy. Then you will travel to Switzerland to supply the architectural services there to the client in Bern. Commercial presence, that's another way of supplying the service. That's when you decide to establish in the third country, and you will supply the service through, for instance, the branch that you will have there in the third country. Cross-border supply, that's the third option, is when you decide to stay in your country, the client stays in his or her country and only the service cross the border. So practically it means that you will perhaps send the plans via email to your client in Bern. So you have to select the mode of supply that will indeed correspond to the way through which you will provide the service. Here, let's imagine that you will indeed stay in your country. The client will be in Bern, and you will send the plans via email, for instance. Then you stay here, and you have on the left-hand side the different types of market access conditions, the different types of requirements that will apply to you. You would like, for instance, to have more information about the specific licensing, authorization, and registration requirements that you need to fulfill if you want to supply architectural service cross-border. And you scroll down, you have the specific explanation here. So it says for Bern, here it says that no licensing, authorization, or registration requirements for architectural service providers were found for this canton. It also says, for instance here, for further information on the professional qualifications required, see the section professional qualification under temporary movement of professionals. So it says that if you want further information on qualifications required, you can go to professional qualification under temporary movement.
So thank you, Thibaud, for all of that information. Could you just conclude, because I think everybody has about 7 minutes and there's 5 more speakers after
No problem. So I was about to conclude indeed to say that we have been developing this tool, My Trade Assistant for Service Investment, which is relatively intuitive. I would invite you to take a few minutes to use and to try and use it. And the current coverage of the tool is indeed the following: Switzerland, UK, Canada, and Japan, and we will add another 4 countries by the end of this year. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Thibaud, for taking us through that demonstration of the Access to Markets tool. We now have online Jakob CORNIDES, who's a policy officer and who's going to talk about the My Trade Assistant for Procurement tool. So it's how to participate in foreign public procurement tenders. Jakob, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello. I see myself on a very, very large screen, which is of course much bigger than if I were there in nature. So you're probably gaining something by me not having come to the location. My intervention will be much on the same line as that of Thierry before, and I'll not eat up a lot of your 7 minutes, but just let me share my screen as well. And then you would see, I hope, you should see the website, which I have just open here. Yeah, okay, that's how I see. So you should see the Access to Procurement main page now, which Thierry has also already shown you, and there's a rider, a tab dedicated right next to services dedicated to procurement. This is the Access to Market procurement tool called Access to Procurement. And as it now stands, it is there to help entrepreneurs from the EU to find out whether a given public procurement in a third country is open to their participation. With open to their participation, I mean that it is covered by one of the trade agreements we have concluded that guarantees for European enterprises a free and equal access to public procurement in third countries. Usually that is on a reciprocal basis, and we have quite a lot of these agreements which are there to create business opportunities for our goods and service suppliers. Now, this tool is relatively new, and so far it exists only in relation to 3 countries. We are going to add more and more countries, one after the other. The first one was Canada, then we added Japan, because these were the 2 most important trade agreements we have recently concluded with the greatest trade volume. And then, of course, we added also the United States, simply because the United States is important. Next country would be the United Kingdom, I hope, and then after that, Switzerland, reflecting their importance in the EU's trade relation. Now, I'll just give you a very, very short demonstration. If it's only 7 minutes, you will then have to find out for yourself. But let's just pick Canada, and you will quickly see how this works. Up here, you have a path with several stations, and essentially you have to select a country. You have to provide the basic information about the procuring entity that has published the tender, the estimated value, and the kind of good or service that is being purchased. Now, in Canada, we have around 8,000 entities in Canada in our database, but just let's pick one, say at federal level. Let's say it could be a government department. Let's see what we have there. Yeah, okay. So here we have, let's say, the Department of Canadian Heritage, and you might assume that these guys from time to time would need an architect. So we select them. Let's assume they have published a tender that might be of interest because it's on services. And yeah, you have to indicate the estimated value of the tender in Canadian dollars, which I think you may do because you have read the tender, you know what it is about, and you have, as a professional, maybe a good estimate what it is worth. So let's say it is 1 million Canadian dollars. This is immediately converted into so-called special drawing rights, which is the international currency basket that is used for our trade agreements. So we know the value, we know it is about services. Then when it is about services, we also have to pick the services from the list of covered services. There is a certain difference because in our trade agreements, usually we do cover the procurement of all goods, but not of all services. And so, it being about architects, we should probably look for architectural services. They are in our list. And it seems that Canada covers them in principle. So we select these. And then we get some follow-up questions. The follow-up questions each correspond to one or more clauses that are actually in the relevant trade agreements. In this case, we have two trade agreements that are of relevance. One is the WTO agreement on government procurement. The other one is the recently concluded EU-Canada trade agreement called CETA. Now, the question runs, does the tender concern the procurement of goods and services in respect of shipbuilding and repair, including related architectural and engineering services? Well, if it's not about shipbuilding, we say no. We go on and we get a positive assessment. I take a step back. If it were about shipbuilding, we would have clicked yes, and the assessment would be negative. It's as simple as this. The whole system is a bit like, how would I say it, like a skiing race, really, where as a skier you race downhill and you have to pass all the gates, and if you miss out on one gate, you are out. So that's the operation principle here. With our reply to the last question, we have missed the decisive gate, but basically, if we say no here, we pass all the gates and we get a positive reply. At the end, you have also links to relevant legal documents, in this case, the relevant provisions of the CETA agreement, and also some guidance document published by the Canadian government and by the European Commission that will help you to understand public procurement in Canada. So, well, I could now go on making the same representation for Japan and the United States, but I think my 7 minutes are exhausted, and so I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jakob, for that very fast and efficient slalom through the procurement tool, which, as you said, is based on the trade agreements that Europe is doing. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to ask Claire Whittaker, who is a trade negotiator of recent foreign trade agreements and provisions on the recognition of qualifications is her subject area. Please, Claire, the floor is yours.
Learning how to use this, but maybe I can introduce myself first. So yes, my name is Claire Whittaker. I work at the Directorate-General for Trade at the European Commission, I actually work directly with Thibaud. We're both part of the Services and Digital Trade team. And my area of expertise is recognition of professional qualifications in the context of free trade agreements, FTAs. So what I'm going to present today is what we do, first of all, for professionals like architects in FTAs, and give you a bit of an insight into what we do, especially in the field of recognition with mutual recognition arrangements. So this first slide is intended to give you a bit of an overview of what the landscape of FTAs concluded by the EU looks like at the moment. As you can see, we've either got FTAs in place or in the pipeline with all of the largest trade partners of the EU. We've mentioned Canada, Japan. We're negotiating at the moment with India, with Indonesia. So there's a really good network there that we're trying to leverage at the moment. And I think that you got a sense already with the tools that my colleagues presented of the work that we're doing to make these FTAs work for professionals and for companies. So it's not just about concluding them, it's also about making them work. And beyond all of these FTAs, we also have the market access that is provided by the agreements under the WTO, the World Trade Organization. There's a specific agreement for services in the WTO, which provides a kind of basis, even with countries with which we don't have a bilateral FTA, like the US, for instance. So, how do free trade agreements help with recognition of qualifications? So, first of all, the idea behind facilitating recognition of qualifications in regulated professions like architects is obviously to facilitate the supply of services in a foreign market. In regulated professions like architecture, but also others like engineering or even accountants, having your degree, your diplomas recognized is the very first step to provide your services. So obviously, if that's in place, then it's going to be a lot easier to go and supply your services abroad. What we can do at the level of the EU, unfortunately, isn't to directly recognize qualifications in an FTA. So that's not something that we can do for questions of competence, and also simply because we don't have that level of harmonization in the EU ourselves. So in a lot of professions, it's not possible to go to another EU member state and to provide your services without an additional test or a period of supervised practice. So I think for engineering, for instance, there isn't the same level of harmonization in the EU as there is for architects. And so because of that, we can't directly put that in our trade agreements. But what we do instead is that we try to conclude specific agreements as part of an FTA, which are called mutual recognition arrangements. And those are specific arrangements within a given profession by which we give recognition to another partner's qualifications, sometimes under certain conditions, sometimes not. And if there is no FTA in place, that's not to say that we can't conclude some form of recognition of qualifications. That's something that the WTO framework and the Agreement on Trade and Services also provides for. So it's really quite a flexible framework with a lot of potential. So if we're doing this in the context of an FTA, you might already be familiar with the steps that can lead to a recognition arrangement. The idea is that the initiative for a mutual recognition arrangement should always come from the professionals, yourselves, who would come to the parties of the FTA. So on our side, that would be us, the Commission, and then submit your ideas for mutual recognition arrangement. On our side, we would then have a look at this document, which is called a joint recommendation, and then see whether this arrangement could have value at the level of the EU and also our partners, and whether the regulatory regimes are actually compatible. Because if the conditions for accessing the profession are too far apart, then it's going to be very difficult to actually agree on a framework for recognition. And then if that all goes well, we come out with a recognition arrangement, which is a legally binding text. Sometimes it's annexed to the FTA, and it's an international treaty between the EU and a third country. So for the moment, we don't have any of these MOAs in place and operating. The only two which have been proposed come from your side, so I'm sure that you're already familiar with them. One is with Canada, and the other one is with the UK, where joint recommendations have been submitted, and we're in the process of either analysing them or trying to get them past the post to actually be applied. So there's been some hurdles with the approval of both of these arrangements, but which I think are very unique to the two partners that we're dealing with. So in the case of Canada, we actually concluded the negotiations on an MRA. The agreement itself is there. We've approved it on the EU side, and we're just waiting for Canada to do the same thing. So Canada, being a federal state, they have they're in discussions with their provinces and territories to see how exactly the MRE should be applied. So that's what we're waiting for. But we really hope that will come to fruition very soon. And then with the UK, we have a slightly different situation where we're coming from a very similar background. When the UK was part of the single market, there was recognition for European qualifications, and I think that that's the situation ideally that we would like to maintain. Unfortunately, that's not quite the way that it came out from the joint recommendation. So we're working on finding an arrangement that might be agreeable to both sides. And we certainly hope that will also come to a positive outcome. Going forward, I think that I'd like to say a few words about the negotiations which we're now having and other possibilities for recognition arrangements. At the moment, I mentioned already, we're negotiating trade agreements with some very large markets, India and Indonesia, to name just a few. And these are partners that have a very strong interest in recognition of qualifications. I think that, so from their side, they have, both of these countries have a practice of concluding MRAs in a regional context through ASEAN, through APEC, and they see value in trying to conclude these kind of arrangements. Because they have a very different experience with recognition of qualifications than we do, they're sometimes asking for things that we can't do from an institutional perspective. We're trying to find some middle ground, but we see that there is a very strong interest internationally for the conclusion of this kind of agreement. And I think that interest is also shared by European member states. So last year, we adopted a package of initiatives at European level on talent and skills mobility. So this included a number of different things. One of them was setting up a talent pool to help foreign professionals find a company to work with in the EU. There was also a recommendation to European regulatory authorities on how to recognize qualifications from third country nationals. And the reasoning behind this is that we need talent from outside the EU to allow us to complete the green transition, the digital transition, and to reach our goals in terms of sustainability and also to remain competitive as a trading bloc. So this is to say that there is a lot of appetite for MRAs within the EU. And I think that as architects, you've already proven that you have the experience with these tools, and you have submitted to us some proposals that we're doing our best to move forward. And I can only encourage you to keep on looking into this, because this is something that we really see has value. And I heard earlier on, architects can make anything possible. Everything is possible with architects. So I look forward to hearing from you very soon.
Thank you very, very much, Claire, for laying down that challenge. So as you see, lots of advice, lots of tools there from DG Trade and some potential new free trade agreements. We're now going to hear from some experts from DG Grow and from the European Innovation Council and SMEs Executive Agency, SMEs. And this is all about entrepreneurship. And we're going to be joined online, first of all, by Adriana MOREL, who's a policy officer and who's going to talk exactly about that European Entrepreneurship Competence Framework. So, Dana, thank you for joining us online. You have your 7 minutes. Dana, we have a nice slide. Are you hearing us? Good to the team, although it's all dark up in the technical box, so I won't be able to see any signs. There we are, we've got a light. Is she coming? I'm getting lots of body language. Dana, are you with us online?
Yes, I am here.
Good. Thank you, Dana. We can hear you.
Yeah. Okay.
Please start.
Okay. So I'm going to talk to you today about something a little bit different, about the entrepreneurship mindset. So what you see here on the screen, we have this framework. It's a competence framework. So we believe that all citizens in Europe and all professions, so you included, should have this entrepreneurship competences. And you can always go to the next slide. Maybe even play the video that's on the next slide. I'd like to show you a video on the European competence framework for entrepreneurship.
Can you play the video, please? It's the next slide.
Yes, thank you.
No, I'm afraid, Dana, the video
Nope.
doesn't work. So perhaps you could move to your next slide, or just tell us briefly about what was in the video.
We move to the next slide, and you can play the video when you get the slides. So what we believe is that entrepreneurship is about action, and it's about seeing opportunities and ideas. I'm sure in your profession you talk a lot about ideas and opportunities, but we have to transform them into value for others. And this value can be a different type. If you can go to the next slide, please. So when we created this entrepreneurship competencies in 2016, together with other competencies for lifelong learning, we believe that this competence is what you see here on the screen: creativity, self-confidence, opportunity, sense of initiative, perseverance, that everybody has to get a chance to acquire these competencies and to have the competencies. And especially attitude towards failure, which is not taught so much in school. I don't know how it is in your profession, but we try to encourage entrepreneurs to fail, look at the lessons learned, and then try again. So this attitude towards failure is important here in Europe. And I've heard my colleagues before talk about the other parts of the world. So I can tell you, for instance, in the US, the attitude towards risk is different. So that's why the entrepreneurship setup there is different. So this is why we're determined to, in a sense, help Europe and European citizens become more entrepreneurial. I hope this will help you as architects also to become more entrepreneurial. And I have this slide that's from author Martin Lakeus to talk about the values you can bring. So economic value is easy. Everybody talks about economic value for yourself or for the others. But the enjoyment value, and I hope that in your profession you get to meet and to honor this enjoyment value, is to create something for the fun of it, because we like it, because it produces joy. So that's another kind of value. Then you have the social value, and social value, we tend to talk a lot about it here in Europe, for instance, as opposed to the US. It's making other people better off, helping them with their suffering. Then we have a harmony value, something that's bigger than us. And for instance, we have as an example here, climate change. So we want to create something because of this harmony value. And last but not least, we have something called the influence value that's related to someone's influence or legacy. And as you know, in today's context, this can be also negative. It's not necessarily always positive. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you. You have to click a few times. It's more interactive. It's too bad I couldn't be there. So no, yeah, thank you. Thank you. So entrepreneurship is a competence. And this is what I like to tell you today, that it is transversal. It applies to everybody, to all walks of life, to all the worlds of education at work. So it applies to your profession as architect. So I hope that you'll use it to improve this creation of actions for value in your profession. So we can say that entrepreneurship is nurtured through value creation, and it can be individual or collective. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So I wanted you to see it. So this is the what we call EntreComp. It's the short for European Entrepreneurship Competence Framework. It has 15 competencies grouped in 3 areas. And you see that you have ideas and opportunities. And though you have their creativity, vision, valuing ideas, ethical and sustainable thinking, and I saw it on a few slides before in this conference. Then you have the resources that are really important. And if you look here on the bottom, there are the individual resources, the inner resources, motivation and perseverance, self-awareness and self-efficacy. And then you have financial and economic literacy. I have to say here that I also work with women and girls. And for women, financial literacy is very important because it's not taught in school. So I don't know how you're doing in the architecture profession with this financial literacy, but it's really important to have it. And then mobilizing the resources that are available and mobilizing others. How do I work with others? These are the resources. And then, as I said in the beginning, it's important to put all this into action. If I don't put it into action, I will not create value. So I will not have an entrepreneurial action. So into action, you have planning and management. I'm sure you know, I heard a very nice talk earlier about that. Working with others in a team. Learning through experience, this has become very important, and here it's including the experience of failure. And we're trying here in the European Union, we're trying to reform a little bit the curriculum in formal and informal learning to put more accent on the experience, not what we can learn in school and memorize by heart. Taking the initiative is something we work a lot with younger people. And then coping with ambiguity, uncertainty, and risk. And this is, again, something that's maybe a little bit newer here in Europe, but it's really important to know our attitudes toward risk. And on the next slide, thank you, you can see that these 15 competencies actually have 60 thematic threads. So they kind of multiply. I'm showing you only a few here. So for instance, creativity has be innovative, define problems, developing ideas, or mobilizing resources. You can see manage resources, you use resources responsibly, or working with others, accepting diversity, for instance. So these make up a lot of learning outcomes. This could be important to you if you use this in a training setting, but you don't have to. I want to show it to you here because I will be putting some material. So if you're interested, you can look at those materials. So next slide, please.
And you have about a minute, Dana.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to, this I will show, if you can keep clicking, I want to show you just the progression model here. This is more for study when you get the slides, or yeah, so you can continue. It's just to show you that it goes from simple to complicated. No, a slide before, if you can still stay. Yeah, here. I took one thread, creativity, and I wanted to show you how it goes from foundation to intermediate, advanced, and expert. So you can use this as a progression model in your work. So it's not only those threads that you saw, but you can also use them to start from one and to basically build on the expertise. And you see here the threads in creativity: be curious and open, develop ideas, define problems, design value, and be innovative. I took this creativity here as an example because I believe this is important to your profession. This is just an example. And in the materials that you see on the next slide, in the sources there, you can have a look at all those. So there are examples on how to use it. And again, there are the videos on YouTube on how to basically, you can use this entrepreneurial mindset to add to your profession. You are architects, but you're also entrepreneurs. So to, in a sense, fulfill your full potential by using this Entrecom framework. So I'll end here. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Dana, for taking us through your entrepreneurial framework. Now, I understand that the next speaker, Fatima Veleth, who's a policy officer at Enterprise Europe Network, is with us. Lovely. Philip earlier was mentioning your organization. Please take us through your guidance that you have. Yes.
Okay, now that Dana explained that as architects, you are also entrepreneurs, take this step and imagine that if there was someone you could talk to that explains exactly, understands what you need, tries to find partners for your projects, tries to identify what are the markets that would be the best for you, and tries to find even financing sources. Would that be too good to be true? It's not. We do have the Enterprise Europe Network, which is basically a EU-funded network that has, it's a one-stop shop, which is a cliche that you already know, but it's basically a business support service entirely funded by the European Union. So it's free of charge. So you can talk to an advisor and explain, this is where my company as an architect, you can be even a self-entrepreneur, you can be a separate one, but you can also find... Sorry? Yes, okay, closer. Yes, sorry. I'm moving too much, so I need to be closer to the microphone. So how can you find this Enterprise Europe Network yourselves and to find this support? So this is some figures for the network. We have, in 15 years that this network exists, already supported 835 small companies per year. The formatting does not seem to be very good. We do have a client satisfaction of 92%, which could be 100. That would be the ideal, but there are still some difficulties to overcome. And the main thing being that it is a network that is based, that is present geographically. You can find a EN advisor in every single EU member state. There's the link at the end with the information on the local contact points. You can find them in different cities, in different areas, not just on the 27 member states, but also in 40 countries around the world. So my colleague already mentioned the FTAs. We do have association agreements and cooperation agreements with several countries around the world. And we have basically a budget of 164 million per year to provide this support. What is it basically? So you can see that there are the EU members, the 27 EU member states. Internationally, there's one association agreement that is currently being signed, which is in Australia, which you can combine so many different self-learning and self-use tools that all my colleagues have already mentioned. But you can talk to someone about this. I want to go into Australia. What can you tell me about Australia? You can use the tool, you can use all the different tools, but you can approach an EN advisor and say, what would be my best approach as an architect? And they can create a business plan for you. They can show what would be the best ways to associate with other architects, to find public procurement, to find different information. This Enterprise Europe network is about innovation and internationalization. So that was the core of the network since the beginning. We have evolved into several other services and advice that the network provides. But basically, this is the motto. So enhancing SMEs' potential to innovate, grow, and develop new products, services, and business models. Not just your service as an architect, but consider mostly the sector that you work on or in is construction. There are connections to other sectors, to public procurement. You are dealing with a lot of big enterprise, big networks, big consortia. So directly you have some contacts, you have some information, but this network can help you find associates, find partners, find new information. And we have heard already, I wasn't there for the entire duration, but basically you have heard the major priority nowadays, which is sustainable business models, not just for your own clients, but also for you yourself as entrepreneurs, because this is the mindset you also need to consider, that you are an entrepreneur as well. So keep it in mind. Recently, there are so many challenges that architects have been already adapting to resilience, to a resilient mindset, meaning that there are new challenges for the way the public space is used, the way materials are being used differently. So this is something that our business network advisors are fully aware, have the information. If they don't have it, they'll find it for you. And this is, okay, I know it's too good to be true, but it does exist. And another aspect of the network is actually finding business partners in the entire value chain, which is not only suppliers, but associates and clients. How? And also the digital version to tailor the digital solutions to your business needs as an entrepreneur, as an architect, but also to your client's business needs, and to find additional information for this. Again, we do also provide advice on EU funding instruments and other financial support tools from the entire scale, from the pure public support through public procurement, but also through grants, free money, but let's say a bit more expensive money, which is the private investment. So venture capitalists, consortia, all kinds of possibilities from 0 to 100% free, private, public combinations. They'll try to find the best solutions because they have access to some of the information directly that it would probably take a lot of time or much more time for you to find on your own, individually. And not the least complicated is to navigate the EU legislation, rules and formalities, and address the single market obstacles. My colleagues from DG GROW are basically, it's the name of the Directorate-General, single market, internal market, entrepreneurship. So it's the entire set of regulations and opportunities. That's also what you need to consider. These are opportunities as well. Again, do consider that even if you are a one single person entrepreneur, or a company, or as an architect, you are individually incorporated, or depending on the way it is functioning in your own country, the rules and regulations about the frameworks. It is possible also, and this is one of the main areas of the Enterprise Europe network, is to scale up and grow internationally. So there are thematically associated advisors that are specialists. It does not necessarily mean that the first person that you talk to will provide you all the answers. This is sort of the central point. They'll direct you to other specialists that can provide all the answers that you need, or at least do their best to try to find all the answers in this case.
Fatima, thank you very much for showing us what the Enterprise Europe Network can do for SMEs.
There should be a last slide with all the contacts.
Okay, which
should be okay.
I think the slides will be made available to people. So our last speaker is Ike Ayebe, who is from ESMA, and there was lots of questions about intellectual property, and you are from the International IP Help Desk, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interest in what you say.
Indeed, thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Ike Ayebe. I work in ISMEA, so this is the executive agency for the EIC. And SMEs, actually I work in the same unit that is in charge of implementing the coordination of the EN. So I can guarantee that the EN can help, and the EN helps a lot. So I'm sure that most of you, if you are dealing with your particular stakeholders in your regions, you may know already some of the EN nodes. And it's important to mention that this is a free service. And the one that I'm going to mention now as well is a free service. So it's always good to have a look, to make a call, to contact them and see what they can offer you. That many times you can be surprised what they can offer you. So in my intervention now, I wanted to specify this service that has been running for many years already. So basically, the Commission trying to support entrepreneurs or businesses, companies to internationalize. They give a wide range of support and in different aspects, and IP and the protection or the valuing the knowledge of the companies is a very relevant point. And therefore, what the Commission had identified is certain areas, regions in the world where bad faith infringements are more common, and where entrepreneurs, European companies may need additional support in order to well plan what they're going to do or how they're going to tackle entering the market in those countries. Therefore, what we have in place is 6 different IP helpdesks, international IP helpdesks. We have the one for the internal market, so the European SME helpdesk, but then we have the China IP helpdesk, the one tackling Latin America, Southeast Asia, India, and Africa. And what does it consist? I will not get into the details why IP matters, why it's important. I know very well that you all know it. But what is the service about? So here you see the geographical distribution. So basically, organization entities, SMEs that are willing to do business, they're already doing business in those regions, will be the target audience. So you could be, as it shows here, established, potentially interested, already working in the region. What is the philosophy of the IP helpdesk? So provide IP capacity building and IP asset management, solution oriented, jargon free, hands-on, easy to understand, supported by a very large pool of IP experts. So each of the offices has a small team of IP experts, but then this is supported by a very large pool with a specific expertise. And then, of course, a lot of collaboration between the different IP helpdesks to encourage them and to improve the services that they are providing lately to European SMEs. So in detail, what are the services? You can have a helpline. You can contact the different IP helpdesk with your question, the problem you are facing. They will reply in 3 days' time. You can set up a one-to-one consultations with an IP advisor that will hear you, could be 1 hour, 2 hours, and discuss your problem and how could be tackled. Then dedicated trainings and events, many times are in collaboration with other entities, but could be tailor-made for a specific domain, sectors, profession. So it could be a tailor-made training organized for the architecture sector. And then events, they are very active. They participate in a wide number of events in Europe and also in the target countries. So many companies that go to trade fairs in the target countries will find somebody representing the international IP helpdesk. Then, of course, publications. There's a wide range of publications, from guidebooks on specific issues. So imagine on the Chinese market, how to access the Chinese market, how to participate in trade fairs. That is one of the recent publications that has been done in collaboration with another initiative we have that is called the SME Center in China. where there's a specific guide, 20 pages, where it explains which are the main issues you have to think about when you go to a trade fair in China, for example, that maybe is one of the most delicate countries. How to think about all the knowledge that you have created, how to protect or take care before entering into any collaboration with a local partner, etc., etc. And then, of course, then on the website that you can find additional information that could be interesting for you. As I said, this is free of charge, first line IP support, fully confidential and to the point. The inquiry help desk is you will get a reply in 1, 2, or 3 days maximum. You can contact them through email, phone, or the website. And they speak several languages. You see, you can contact them in English, Spanish, French, German, and Portuguese. This is a first line support. So of course, there are some limitations. This service is not there to just disrupt the already existing market of IP specialists, IP lawyers. So what the IP help desk could give you is an orientation, some guidance, where to go, what to do. But if you really want to get into, imagine patenting one of your creations, or getting into, let's say, a legal case with from an infringement or enforcement case, that can only be provided by a lawyer. But for your profession, that many times you participate in public tenders, or you participate in competitions with your design, the IP helpers are there to advise you how to let's say, participate, and which are the things you have to take into consideration before actually participating. As an example, to conclude, last year there was one case, I think it's the only one recently, but it was a case of an Italian architect that his design was stolen in China in a competition, and the IP service provided some certain support. We are now following the company the architect to understand what is the situation right now. But this is the type of service that they will provide you without any problem, and as I said, very, very fast. Just to conclude, as I said, in the website you can find all the publications that are very relevant and very easy to read. Here the links of the different IP help desks and the website. We have one common website for the 6 regions. And I only invite you to have a look, to contact them, to understand for what, let's say, or how helpful they could be for your services if you are willing to go international to these regions. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm sure it's very reassuring that there is this support that's available. Of course, you may need a lawyer, but it is the first line of contact. So lots of food for thought there, lots of information that's available from these organizations, DG Grow, DG Trade, Enterprise Europe Network, ESMA, as we've just heard with this IP help desk. I understand, though, that there is a Belgian architect in the audience who has a very important information announcement for us. Axel? Are you in the audience? Axel Polis, would you like to come on stage? Because I believe that you have some good news for us. I'll say it from here. But you'll need a microphone. You'll need a microphone. Are you sure you don't want to come on stage? Because it's such good news that you might want to be here.
Well, but it's fine here. So we have a nice event this evening in the former stock exchange in the city center of Brussels. But the big question is how to get there. The most easiest thing that you can do is take bus 71, and how that you have to do that. I've been I've placed some papers here in the coffee break area, 5, 6, on which you can see the walking route towards the bus stop, and it's the bus stop Musée d'Ixelles. There you have to take bus 71 to the ending, which is De Broekère, and then you're really in the city center of Brussels. And from there on, it's 300-400 meters to the stock exchange. In fact, you can't miss it. But anyway, I've put it in the breakout room so that you can see over there what to do. I have other good news, and that is that I have some bus tickets for the people who are enrolled to the event. Maybe there are other people who haven't enrolled yet. We can fix that, but please pass by, give me your name, and so the organization over there knows how much people we can see over there. So during the coffee break, I'll be handing over bus tickets to those who want a bus ticket.
And to go to the Belgian Beer Festival, indeed. Absolutely. Thank you, Axel. I'm sure there'll be many takers. And
Yes.
as you can see, it is now time for coffee. Please come back at 3:45. Axel, you wanted to say something?
It
La
is,
Bourse.
yeah, it is Beurs. It is Belgian Beer World. That's the name of the museum kind function that's in the building now.
Okay, the Belgian Beer World, if you want to know anything about Belgian beer,
But everything,
you sort of know what Axel looks
everything
like,
is on
and
paper,
he'll do
and
that.
I have some extra some extra papers for those who want an extra paper to find the route.
Okay, lovely. See everybody at 3:45. Thank you.